Come with us on a journey into the unknown, the unexplained, and the unbelievable. We will test your senses and challenge your beliefs. A world where science and religion clash. Or do they? You will meet real people and hear real stories, but you will not believe. You will witness strange sights and hear strange sounds, but you will not believe. This is the New England Ghost Project. Welcome to the nightmare.
Good morning, everyone. It's 11:03 in the Valley, and welcome to Ghost Chronicles Morning Edition. I am Ron Kolick, your host, the gatekeeper to the realm of the unknown, the unexplained, and the unbelievable. New England's own Van Helsing.
That's what you get for listening to old shows. Starting to sound like old AM radio.
And of course, is the voice of the Professor Lou Blasi. Yeah, I know it. I listened to Dave Martini's and whoever else they had dug up. They used to read the top of the hour
news. Yeah,
top of the hour news. Anyways, we got a special show today because this is the home of the first place New England Patriots, and we brought in another expert. Probably one of the most wickedest, smartest guys I know. Anyways, he is a virtual potpourri of lighthouse information. He is none other than Jeremy D'Entremont.
Morning, Ron.
Good morning. You know, I used to call you
smart.
Wicked smart. Wow. Wicked smart. My cousin from Boston.
Yeah, I love those commercials.
I do too.
I bet you it's the only places like this in Boston. I mean, in this region, anyways. Yep. They probably don't even play them anywhere else, anyway. So, Jeremy, I mean, I was thinking about the other day. You and I have known each other for over 15 years, right? 2005.
That's about right. Yeah. Would have been, 15, 16 years. Yeah.
15, 16 years over 2000. Jeremy is the current president of the, whatever they call it now. Is it president, chairman? I don't know, of the American Lighthouse Foundation's board.
We call it chairman because
okay,
it's not, we don't need to go into details about that. But yeah, chairman of Friends of Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse is a chapter of the American Lighthouse Foundation. Yeah.
Which is the, wait a minute. No. What? Huh?
What?
No, you confused me. Wait a minute. No, American Lighthouse Foundation is the
parent organization.
Friends of Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse is a chapter of the.
Isn't that what I said?
Well, we were talking about ALF.
I think it's what I said.
No,
I'm not sure. You
were talking about ALF, and then you said, which is a.
No, I said Friends of Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse is a chapter of the American Lighthouse Foundation. At least I think that's what I said.
Let's play back that tape.
I tend to forget what I've said.
Like it matters anyway. But anyways,
we got there.
Yeah. Jeremy has also written about 6,000 books on lighthouses, and he is the host of a great podcast. It's called Lighthearted. I believe it's called Lighthearted, right?
It is called Lighthearted. Okay, 2 words, light space hearted, meaning people who have lighthouses in their hearts. That's the idea.
Nice.
And you were just on it in the Halloween edition.
I did, and we talked about some of the stuff we're going to talk about today.
Yeah,
so it was kind of cool.
It was a lot of fun.
It was. Anytime we get together is always. I mean, 15 years, and we've done a lot of investigating together as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've done Portsmouth Harbor, of course, but New London Ledge we did together. Also, Borden Flats,
Rose Island,
which we got great. That was a great. That is one of my greatest paranormal experiences of my life. I think was from there, other than seeing the full operation.
Look at this. I'm just looking at
Goat Island.
Goat Island. I always say Duck Island on that one for some reason. I don't know.
There are some Duck Islands, but we haven't done a Duck Island.
Yeah, okay.
I'm looking at Lighthearted on Apple Podcasts, and it's 148 episodes. Good for you.
Yeah, he's a machine.
That's the numbered episodes. I've done about a dozen special episodes too. So I think it's around 160 altogether. Yeah,
very nice.
2019.
How long are they?
They're as long as they need to be. Yeah. They're between a half hour and an hour and a half, depending on how long they need to be.
Yeah, 35, yours was one of the longer 55, ones. 115. Oh yeah, Ron
yours was well over an hour.
113.
One of the longest.
Depending how boring the guest is, I guess. But what's some of the subjects you carry that you cover in the podcast?
I've interviewed a lot of people who are like involved with lighthouse preservation organizations, not just in this country but other countries too. I've talked with authors who've written books on lighthouses. I've talked with people who run B&Bs and things like that at lighthouses.
Oh, cool.
Interesting. Yeah. Including a woman in Norway who owns a lighthouse on a little island.
Yeah.
Called Little Island. That's the name of it, actually. And it's in the Arctic Circle. So there's a few weeks a year where it's completely dark. The sun never rises.
Wow.
So that was really interesting. And a guy who runs a B&B on an island in Sweden that won an award for best small hotel in the world.
Really?
Not too long ago. So yeah.
Was that the Ice Palace?
No. Anyway, it looks beautiful, but yeah, it gets cold in the winter.
Yeah.
And on. I mean, there's a lot of things that are ex-lighthouse keepers. I've interviewed a number of ex-lighthouse keepers. Yeah, and that's always interesting. I interviewed one of the guys who was one of the last 2 Coast Guard light keepers at Boone Island, a place you're very familiar with, 6 miles off the coast of
we
southern
try to buy
Maine.
that place.
Yeah.
There are some ghost stories there, by the way, as you probably know. But he was there with another guy in the blizzard of 1978 when the island was virtually underwater. It's very low, and they had to go up in the lighthouse. And on the second day of the storm, they were rescued by helicopter. They went up to the top of the lighthouse.
From the lighthouse.
Wow. Yeah, the helicopter lowered a ladder, and they had to climb over the railing from the catwalk at the top of the lighthouse into
that's
the basket, get raised up into the helicopter.
Wow.
That he was not afraid of heights until that day. Now he's afraid of heights. Yeah. But that was super interesting.
And is that when the storm was going?
The storm was still going, yeah, but it was worse the day before. But it was still bad enough that the island was awash, as they say. The waves are going right over the island.
That does not sound like fun.
Some guy bought it and he's going to rebuild the keeper's house on there.
He has.
He has. Wow.
Bobby Sager, a very interesting man from Boston, owns Boone Island now. He also owns a couple of other lighthouses. And he, just this past season, I didn't hear anything in advance, but I was out there a couple of times, near it in boats, and he was building a house there. It's not as big as the old keepers' houses that used to stand there, which were torn down many years ago, but it's a house, and it's fairly close to the edge of the island. So we'll see what happens. I wish him the best. I hope it lasts a while, but there is definitely a house in progress. It may be finished by now.
All right, you reminded me, because you were talking about bed and breakfasts at lighthouses and things like that. I stayed at a lighthouse. I house sat at a lighthouse. It wasn't an Airbnb or anything, in Maine on Vinyl Haven. And are you familiar with it?
Was it Brown's Head? It must have been Brown's Head.
I don't.
Or was it Heron Neck on Hurricane Island, which is near, or Greens Island? I'm sorry, Greens Island, Hurricane Sound, which is near there. Could have been either one of those.
Yeah, well,
Brown's Head is actually on Vinyl Haven, way off by itself. It's pretty isolated.
And there's a house there, though, right?
Yeah.
Because it was a house with a lighthouse attached to it.
That must have been it.
Yeah.
And that is now owned by the American Lighthouse Foundation.
Is it?
Used to be owned by the town of Vinyl Haven, and they
Really?
gave it to the American Lighthouse Foundation. Yeah.
What was fun about it was we went out there and we went to the local store and told them we were house sitting at the lighthouse, and they said, you got to watch this movie. And they handed this movie called High Frequency, which was shot. A lot of it was shot at the lighthouse. In fact, at one point we're sitting in the room and we're watching it on TV, and the scene that's being shot is that room from almost the exact angle we were looking at it. It was
I
wild.
wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. Well,
Any ghost stories out there?
That I don't know.
I haven't heard any, but there's probably some in there somewhere. Usually are.
Doesn't seem like a great life. I mean, because that island's got to be 40 minutes or more.
Go
off.
to Boone Island, you
At
see what a
least
great life
Vinyl
is.
Haven has a population. It's a small town, very small town, basically, as opposed to some of these places like Boone Island that are just on an isolated rock.
Oh, what about the tower ones? The one that got knocked down in the blizzard there. I mean, that was just a metal structure. I mean, you were up on legs.
Whale Rock, Rhode Island was knocked down in the hurricane of 38. The keeper was never found.
But being plopped on a remote island like that, it's kind of like you see where Stephen King got his inspiration. It's
or the movie The Lighthouse. I don't know if you saw that
No,
a
I haven't
couple
seen
years
that,
ago.
no.
Yeah, that's about two guys at an isolated lighthouse in Maine.
There's a lot of lighthouse movies. Some of them good, some of them not so good.
Well, this wasn't a lighthouse movie. It was two guys ham operators who hacked into some signal that there was a murder going on somewhere else, and they were trying to prevent it from happening or something. But
I wasn't aware of that. I got to
Yeah.
find it.
See that?
I
Interesting.
believe it was called High Frequency, and there's another movie called High Frequency. That's not it. A more popular movie.
Yeah,
but-
the
The one with Dennis Quaid.
talks to
I
his
think,
father or something, right?
yeah, it's
yeah,
not that
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I've seen that one, but
Yeah,
not the
me
one
too.
you're talking.
Yeah, me neither.
Yep.
So we have to go search for it now. Is it on my
Yeah.
favorite tubby?
I don't know. I'll go find out.
To
And
be.
talk to me a little bit because I live on Plum Island and I have the Plum Island light there, and there are
Yeah.
several lights in Newburyport as well, including a couple of them in the harbor that are called range lighthouse. Explain the concept of a range lighthouse to me.
Sure. Actually, the lighthouse on Plum Island, at the tip of Plum Island near the mouth of the Merrimack there, originally, when that was established in 1788, it was the first range lights in the United States. There were two lights there.
Oh,
So
okay.
range lights, basically, if you're coming into a channel, or in that case, into the entrance to a harbor or river, if there's range lights, you'll have a front range light and a rear range light. And the rear light is higher than the front light. So as you're coming up in the channel, you line them up so the front light is directly in front of the rear light. They're straight up and down.
Right.
And that means you're in the correct channel. If you veer, then the lights aren't lined up anymore.
So that helps you guide the distance, where you are, so you're in the deepest part of the harbor.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
just tells you you're right smack on
I
the.
mean,
where
that's
you
what
should be.
lighthouses are for navigation. So, I mean, yeah, that's the important part of it. And that's why there's still, a lot of them are still, the lights are maintained by the Coast Guard because they are.
Yeah. Most of them
yeah.
are still active. There's well over 800 lighthouses in the country, and approximately 50 to 60% are still active aids to navigation.
What was the purpose of the little sea lamps that they have everywhere?
Sea lamps. I like that term. The little lighthouses you call sea lamps,
the
right?
little. I mean, we did one up. It was way at the end of. I forget where it was. It was on that trip we took, but with David Wells and
Oh, the Portland breakwater light,
Yeah,
otherwise
it's just
known as bug light,
like two
Really?
stories. It's the
Oh, really?
tiniest thing
Yeah.
in the world.
based on an ancient Greek monument. It's a really interesting lighthouse in South Portland, Maine. Well, that's a small lighthouse because it's at the entrance to the harbor, Portland Harbor, and it didn't need to be real tall. It's just something that they wanted mariners to see as they're approaching the harbor entrance, as opposed to some of the light. And also, it's surrounded by islands there, so the islands would block it anyway after a couple of miles. So you have really tall lighthouses in places like North Carolina, the Outer Banks of North Carolina.
Yeah.
Cape Hatteras is really famous. It's 200 feet tall, tallest lighthouse in the country. If it's a light on low ground in a major shipping lane, that kind of thing, you wanted a light that would be seen for 25 miles or so, as opposed to a light like the one you're talking about, Portland breakwater light, that only needed to be seen a couple of miles. So it depended on where they're located and the purpose of the light.
All right, you just
That's what it
inspired
is.
another question for me, and tell me if this. I'm under the impression that there are no red stripe lighthouses up here, because when you brought out the Outer Banks, those are red striped, right? Why the difference?
Black. Well, they have black stripes. Cape Hatteras has a black and white,
Okay.
like Barber Pole stripe.
Yep.
Cape Lookout has like a checkerboard pattern. They tend to be black and white. There is a red and white striped lighthouse in New England, West Quoddy Head. Ron and I
Way
have been
the
there
hell up
together on a
there.
bus trip.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Can't go
Yeah.
any farther.
No, it's the easternmost point in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
A beautiful, beautiful spot, and that has
It has
cars
gargoyles
all
too, don't it?
What's that?
Doesn't it have gargoyles?
It does have gargoyles.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Yeah,
Yeah.
drain spouts
Cool. Wicked
that
cool.
drain the water from the lantern roof. And those were it originally had the gargoyles. They were removed many years ago, but when they restored the lighthouse a few years ago, they recreated the gargoyles and put them back.
Is there
I was
any
just at a
meaning
red
to
and white
the?
stripe. I was just in Georgia, my wife and I, a couple
Mhm.
of weeks ago. We went to Savannah, Georgia, and there's a lighthouse there with red and white stripes, Sapelo Island. We took a special
Of
tour.
course, board and flat is too.
Is there a meaning to the patterns that are on the lighthouses, or just what they pick?
It's the day mark. It just makes them easier to recognize during the day. So like in North Carolina, where you have a bunch of tall brick lighthouses on low-lying beaches, it'd be hard to tell them apart otherwise without those distinctive markings.
Mhm.
And
So
we did. We investigated board and flats, which the guy painted with red, even though it wasn't.
yeah, it was a white lighthouse, but our friend Nick painted the bottom half red to make it stand out better. And he says that the Coast Guard approved that, and the local mariners, fishermen and people love it because it stands out so much better. At first I was sort of against it because historically that's not what it looked like, but then I came around and I thought, well, that was a good idea. It's really sharp.
Came to the dark side. Yeah, we've had some interesting investigations, and we mentioned Rose Island, which was, to me, one of the most interesting paranormal experiences I ever have, and that, of course, is what we were talking about, table tip. Do you remember that, Jeremy?
I sure do. How could I forget? That was one of the most interesting experiences I've ever had, for sure.
Now, you had never done table tipping before prior to that, did you?
I believe that was the first time.
Yeah.
Did it a couple of times at different places after that, but I believe that was the first time.
Yeah, Dave.
Excuse me.
Dave, what's his name? Dave
McCurdy, who was the director there at the time.
He hadn't done it either, and that was our first experience. We started playing around with a little candle table, which is a small 3-legged table, in one of the rooms where there's a picture on the wall, and supposedly they got a face of the guy in the picture when they took camera of it. But yeah, that was fun. So it was a little table. We were kind of like moving her, it was doing its thing, and it liked Jeremy for some reason. I have no idea.
Oh yeah. It was really light, but I swear that table was almost jumping off the floor. It was like sort of dancing around, but it was going like in a circle at one point and pressed up against me. And
yeah, it chased Jeremy a couple times.
I said, please don't hurt me. Of course, according to you, it was more like, please don't hurt me.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's it.
I wouldn't want to be chased around by an inanimate object either.
I always threatened I would get T-shirts made up. Please don't hurt me. But then
I wasn't super frightened, but it was a little unnerving, I have to say.
Yeah, especially it was your first thing. I think it was my third time ever doing it at one time. But it's a small table, so you're always like, I know Jeremy's a little skeptical, and so am I, and I know you a lot too. And so we decided to do it up in the keeper's house, keeper's apartment, whatever it is, late at night.
Yeah.
And that was totally freaky.
Was that actually in the lighthouse, or is it a separate?
Oh, it's all in the lighthouse. It's all one building. The lighthouse tower is up on the roof of the building.
Oh, I see.
So it's all
lighthouses
integral.
Lighthouses. I mean, most people think of a lighthouse like the picture of the one that's behind Jeremy. It's just a big phalanx, whatever it is, big prick.
But wait a minute.
But they're all different types. I mean, we went to on the Ledge, which is basically a house with the lighthouse on top of it. And there were all different types. They're little bug lights, like tiny sea lamps. Yeah. And then there's the spider ones that out in the water, and they're metal structures. They're everything, right, Jeremy?
Oh yeah, there's a wide variety. The one behind the picture I have as a backdrop is Nubble Lighthouse in York, Maine.
Yeah, everybody loves
one
that
of the most popular lighthouses in the world, photographed by about 500,000 people a year. Just very picturesque.
No idea why.
It's an easy shot. Everyone's standing there, and it's so right in front of you.
No offense, but there are better looking lighthouses than that one.
Well, I don't know. I think it's perfect. There's a lot of. You're right. There's a lot of.
Looks very Maine. It's got the rocky coast, and they decorate it for Christmas, and it's
the red.
Yeah, and it's got the advantage that they can't get on the island. It's off limits, but they can drive to the park there and get that view very, very easily. Most lighthouses, as you know, Ron, are a little bit difficult to reach.
Get their fried clams and whatever else in the shack. Yeah.
Jeremy, what came first, the interest in lighthouses or the interest in the paranormal, and were they handcuffed together, or how did that work?
Ooh, that's a good question. Actually, I would say I had an interest in the paranormal before I got interested in lighthouses. When I was a kid, I always remember, that I was homesick from school one day, and I was probably, I think, around maybe 10 years old, I'm going to say. And there was a talk show on TV, and they were talking about ghost hunting. It might have been Hans Holzer, but I'm not sure.
That is old.
Ghost hunter. What's that?
That is old.
Yeah, well, I am old. So, but they were talking about ghost hunting, and I'm listening to it, and I'm thinking, I guess before that I hadn't given it much thought, but I was thinking the way they're talking about this, it seems to me like it's actually true. Like they're talking about something real. It's not just, something that's being made up. And it stuck with me. So and I was always interested in sort of it's not, I don't know if it's exactly paranormal, but like Kreskin, the mentalist.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
saw
yeah.
him live one time.
Yeah, he's cool.
And had the Kreskin home game with the pendulum.
Did
and
you
everything.
really? You still got it?
Question. Yeah. No, I don't still have
Oh,
it,
bummer.
but I loved it. I played with it a lot.
Yeah.
And I was just interested in possibilities, what's true. But anyway, so yeah, I grew up in Lynn, Mass, near the ocean, and was fascinated by the ocean. And there's an island off Lynn Beach called Egg Rock, which used to have a lighthouse many years before, but didn't have a lighthouse when I was growing up. But I used to look at it and think it was intriguing and kind of mysterious. But it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I really got into lighthouses, and I got hooked in a big way.
How did you get involved in it to start with? I mean, everybody has interest in different things, but where you are as for Mr. Lighthouse, how do you get from that spot, slight interest, to being such an expert on lighthouses?
Well, first of all, I come from a family, I think both my brothers are the same way. We're obsessive. We get into a subject and get completely into it, get like immersed in it. But when I was growing up, there was a popular historian, Edward Rowe Snow, R-O-W-E, Snow, S-N-O-W. And he wrote many, many books about maritime history, mostly New England. Islands of Boston Harbor was his first book. And he wrote about shipwrecks and pirates and treasures and big storms, hurricanes, all the cool things, and lighthouses, of course, the things that make the New England coast so interesting. I met him at a book signing. My stepfather's family had known his family many years before. And I also did a tour in Boston Harbor with him in 1979. And then in the 80s, I moved to Winthrop, Massachusetts, which is where Edward Rowe Snow was from. And I did a series of videos about him for the local cable TV station.
Oh, cool.
And that's really when I got hooked. He was also the flying Santa to lighthouses for more than 40 years, where he would fly in a plane over the lighthouses of New England, sometimes other places too, and drop presents out of his plane, drop heavily padded, obviously, packages for keepers and their families at the remote lighthouses.
And it's still going on today, right? Because Jeremy's
It is
very much
going on
involved
today.
in that. Yeah.
Nonprofit Friends of Flying Santa, and it's by helicopter now. And the helicopters land at Coast Guard stations, and it's a way of showing appreciation to the Coast Guard today.
Yeah. They'll be stopping at Portsmouth Harbor too.
This coming Saturday. It's not a public event, so
no, which is in Newcastle, by the way. But
yeah,
it is. All right, Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse in
just
Newcastle.
to confuse you more. That's all. That's why we don't worry. They'll never find it anyways. Most people can't find our lighthouse, which is funny, really.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of hidden from view on the Coast Guard station unless you're in a boat, but
kind of goes against the whole principle of the lighthouse. But
no, because you remember you're supposed to see it from the water, not necessarily
Fair
on
enough.
land.
Yep.
The water is its front yard, the land is its backyard, sort of. But anyway, so I blame or credit, depending on the mood I'm in, Edward Rowe Snow and my own stepfather, who was descended from sea captains and shipbuilders on the Maine coast, and he wrote a book about it himself. So those two people I credit for my interest in lighthouses and maritime history.
We'll talk to you about the one you want to see later on in the show, but what's the one you have seen that you love? Before
we get there, we've like gone from where the original conversation was, which was back on Rose Island Lighthouse. So we were talking about the
tipping.
the table tipping. That we can go on to the other stuff, but I did want to finish that up before people say, well, what happened? It's like, oh yeah. So we were, it was late at night, and we went up to the keeper's house, which is how we started jumping off on it, the squirrel thing. And it's Jeremy, myself, a couple of guys from the thing, the gopher that we had with us, and Dave, and we just sat around this big freaking oak table. It was double pedestal oak. It was really thick. And
really heavy.
I had no clue that this would actually work. Seriously, I had no. I wouldn't. If I
didn't think it would.
If I had, if I was betting at that time, I would have bet it wouldn't.
Because of the heft of the table, or
I mean,
it was super heavy.
Yeah, it was huge, and it was thick and heavy. As the little candle table's only got 3 legs, so you're not like super unstable, but
Yeah.
you're not going to move a double pedestal one. I mean, that thing is not going anywhere. And so we sat down and we started, the session, and it didn't like jump right up again, but it started. It was like vibration in the table, and it's like turning the water kind of like in it a little bit, and then you want to take it from there, Jeremy?
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, I would call it a very fine vibration at first.
Yeah.
And in my experience, that's how this usually starts. But in this case, it was very distinct. And there are like, I think 6 of us sitting around the table.
Yeah, I believe so.
And yeah, we have our hands lightly on the table. And as it started to vibrate, I'm looking around, nobody was doing more than just having their fingertips on the table. I think I looked underneath and nobody's legs are touching the table. It was probably, I'm going to guess maybe 5 feet across. I mean, it was a big
good table. Yeah.
Round. And then after a few more minutes, it started to kind of go ba-boom, ba-boom, move a little bit. And people started, it was late. It was like 2 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah. It was really late.
It was really late.
We were all
tired.
giddy.
We'd investigated for a few hours. And so people were a little silly, I think.
Oh yeah.
And
a lot
we were
silly.
like sort of egging it on, like, come on, you can move it, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they got sort of rowdy. People are almost yelling. And this seemed like the more rowdy things got, the more
and more laughing too. Yeah.
Yeah. And after a while, it was really, like one side would come off the floor and make a thud and boom, 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 that kind of thing. Do you want to pick it up from there? Or,
well, I mean, you can continue. You were doing fine.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how long the whole session was. I'm going to guess 10 minutes at the most, maybe less than that.
We have it recorded, by the way. We did record it.
Yeah. It wasn't super long, but it was so dramatic. And towards the end, where people are yelling, come on, get off the floor. Actually, you can get off the floor. We know you can do it. And it seemed like right at the end, I'm not 100% sure the table completely left the floor, but at the very least, one side was well up.
Wow.
And it made a big thud at
with
the end.
Boom. And that was it. It just dead.
Wow.
Yeah. It was just
over. Stopped. Just stopped. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
And
cool.
we all applauded.
Yeah.
Cheered and applauded.
It was
like somebody put on a show for us.
Yeah. Who are you dealing with? Do you know?
Well, the usual suspect there.
Yeah, I hate that, but that's fine. All right, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I know. We don't know. We don't know. But I will say that, like a lot of lighthouses, there's often a feeling that it's a lighthouse keeper, who used to live there. And there was a guy named Charles Curtis at Rose Island who was keeper there for 30-ish years. I can't quite think off the top of my head. I think he started in like 1887 and was there for 30-ish years. I forget the exact length of time, but a really long time with his family. His grandson lived with them some of the time, and his grandson helped restore the lighthouse, which was pretty cool. Wanton Chase. But anyway, so like that picture Ron mentioned in the downstairs in the house there, it's got glass over it. Somebody took a picture and it looks like a reflection of a face in the picture that was not the photographer. It's kind of in the corner of the picture. And a lot of people think, I'm not convinced of it, but people think it looks like Charles Curtis, the keeper there. But anyway, but like Ron said, we don't know what was going on there.
But it is a cool lighthouse. It's wicked cool. I was going to say something too. I forgot. Yeah, the table thing was interesting because, like I said, I really didn't expect anything to happen, and yet it did. And I think it took everybody by surprise. And Jeremy and I, this was fun. Jeremy did a talk for I think it was the group, right? The Lighthouse group at that time. It was that
was a little bit later. I think it was a year or two later.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, later in the season. And
well, I mean, not the same year. I think
no. Later on doesn't time doesn't matter.
right.
Later on, and so we got to stay over at the lighthouse again, and Dave took us there. Of course, this was terrible. And he came out in his boat. Right, he's got this boat. It's got no lights of the stupid thing. It's windy. It's rainy.
Well, I think it had lights, but it was foggy.
Oh, it was brutal. I mean, he didn't. It was brutal. He couldn't see nothing. and he comes whipping in. He does his U-turn and brings it right up to the dock like it was
It was
nothing.
unbelievable. It was like he had sixth sense about it or something.
Yeah, I was like, holy crap! I ain't as scared of ghosts, but shit, I'm scared of you driving.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then that night we tried to duplicate it, and we intentionally tried to move it too, and we just couldn't do it. We couldn't get anything out of it.
Three of
Yeah.
us, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
Amazing.
to me that was one of the most interesting paranormal experiences I had in my life. Other than I've seen full operations, one at Portsmouth Harbor, of course, and another one at Wood Island. It's funny, two of the lighthouses, but
And
yeah.
I'm interested in the end part that you talked about, because the way you
Wait,
talked
what'd
about
you
it,
say?
I'm interested in the end part
Okay,
of that
end
first,
part.
when
All right.
the
Gotta be careful when you say end part.
when the table settled,
Yes.
and you guys, from the way you told it, it sounds like you knew right away whatever was you were dealing with was gone.
Yeah, it was just boom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and see that
then-
kind of expressing that kind of feeling, because you knew it right away. It wasn't like a pause. You knew, oh wow, just left.
Yeah,
it's finished. Yeah, we
Interesting.
knew
Yeah,
it.
because we were asking too. Can you give us one more thing? Can you give us one last thing? If let us. And it's like boom. That was it.
Wow.
Like Jeremy said, we don't know if it completely came off the table, but at least one side went up high enough that if it's very dramatic. If you've seen the video on it, and it's really dramatic. You can see, okay, bang, that is the end, and it's just like the exclamation point.
Yeah.
So
It was like an exclamation point. Yeah.
but it was. Good.
It's the kind of thing I wouldn't believe it if I wasn't there.
Yeah.
If you told me the story, even if I saw the video, I'd think, well, somebody's moving that with their
Exactly.
legs or something.
Yeah, and we look. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the video once again, because we shot it at table level, and you can see the distance between the table and their legs. I mean, they would have to be.
Yeah.
Whoa, I'm gonna sort of stick to try to get it up. It's in. Yeah, that does sound good. But
I wasn't going to say anything.
but
anyway, it's Ron and I have talked about this a lot. That's the world we live in terms of the paranormal. It's like what could possibly happen that you would ultimately believe, because video can be video. You can't trust video.
Right.
It has to be a personal experience for you to really believe.
I agree.
yeah, me too. Me too.
The interesting thing about that is I kept, running it over in my mind. How is this possible? And because I was there and I experienced it, like you said, I know it really happened and that people weren't moving it with their hands or legs or anything. So to me, there's two possible explanations. One is that there was some sort of entity, paranormal, whatever you want to call it, that was kind of moving the table or helping us move the table, or our own subconscious minds through our fingertips were making the table move like that. To me, either way, it's absolutely amazing.
The interesting thing about what you said, Jeremy, is we don't really know what the paranormal is. Everybody has theories, we're talking to ghosts and everything, but we don't know how much of it is really created by our own minds, because our own reality is created. That's why you look at a picture. You talked about the photograph of the thing, and they saw the captain, but you didn't see the captain. So everybody's reality is a little different. They see kind of what they wish to see sometimes, or what they expect to see sometimes. And, it's difficult. It's a really difficult thing to prove. And I don't think we'll ever prove they're paranormal as far as what they are exactly.
It doesn't have to be one or the other. What if it's both? What if it's the entity going through your
using our energy? Yeah.
Using your energy.
The old spiritualists believe that. Yeah.
I don't rule any of this out, but I often do think that it's kind of a projection of the people there, or person or people, having the experience.
Yeah, individual people. That's how I always think with individual people. I'm always kind of skeptical of it. But when you get a group setting and everyone's sharing, I mean, the table moved for everybody.
Right.
It didn't move for one person. That's hard to argue with.
But, on Jeremy's line, we talk about, energy is basically what we're talking about. And if you go to like a concert or something, you can feel energy in the air, the artists feed off the energy. And it's the same way. I mean, maybe we're providing this energy either ourselves to move it, or for a spirit to move it. I mean, we really don't know if the ghost is moving it or whoever's moving it.
That's funny.
Could be demons.
I tell the story all the time of walking in Boston while they were taking down the garden. And at one point it was half down. And there was a bunch of us, a couple dozen people just sitting there looking at the open half of the Boston garden. And you could tell everybody was connecting with what they'd experienced in the place. There is an energy about it. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go back to lighthouses in general now. And Jeremy, if you could live on a lighthouse, which lighthouse would you live in anywhere in the world?
Well, first of all, I don't think Charlotte, my wife, would
Well, whatever.
allow that.
Whatever.
But if it was up to me, people say to me all the time, I bet you would have loved to be a lighthouse keeper. First of all, as you know, Ron, there's really no more lighthouse keepers in the traditional sense. The lights are automated. There's people living at some of them in different circumstances, but they're not.
Well,
really
what about the
lighthouse
one in
keepers.
Boston? Isn't she
Well,
still-
she's Sally, my friend Sally
Yeah.
Snowman, who I just emailed seconds before I got on with you guys.
Ooh.
She is the only official lighthouse keeper in the United States still employed by the federal government.
Wow.
But the light is automated. Her job is more about supervising volunteers and leading tours and so forth. So it's still a very important job, but it's not the traditional lighthouse keeping job.
So we're lighthouse keepers then.
We are. I say the preservationists are the lighthouse keepers of today. In some cases, private owners, but often volunteers for a lot of these organizations. But let's see. You asked me what lighthouse would I like to live at?
Yep.
That's hard. I mean, there's a lot that I just find so attractive. There's one in pretty far north in Maine, near Deer Isle, Maine. I'm sure a lot of people would know where that is, but beautiful area. There's a lighthouse called Pumpkin Island.
Oh,
Now, it looks a lot like Nubble, the one I have as the backdrop here,
Mhm.
but Pumpkin Island is not nearly so well known. And it's just so gorgeous, and it's just a short distance from the mainland. And I think it's one of the prettiest anywhere. And it's got a bigger house. Pardon me. It's got a bigger house than Nubble Light. That would be a beautiful place to live, I think.
Would you live in a solitude lighthouse or one that was more urbanized?
Well, that pardon me a second. Pardon me.
It's a ghost.
I think a combination of the two is what I would like. Someplace that's isolated, not near like a big city or something like that.
Right.
And there are lighthouses in big cities. You got lighthouses in New York Harbor and so forth, or in Boston Harbor.
I
But,
would be honest with you, I wouldn't like to live in Portsmouth. That's too busy for me.
Yeah, well, it's also on a Coast Guard station, which would be
well,
kind of strange.
Yeah.
But aside from that,
Besides-
but so I like the idea of a combination where you're not at a big city, but you're near a town at least. So it's not like you're, completely isolated. And would be, some of the really isolated ones, it's difficult to get ashore. It's out on an island or a rock. And it could be difficult to get supplies to it and that kind of thing.
Would you like to live in one like that for at least a while to see what it was like?
One night might be interesting. I'm not sure it would.
Yeah.
I don't have any
You
burning
brave
desire
sort.
Yeah.
It's always my goal, and I don't know if I'll ever get to do it, but I want to be at Whalebeck during a
Or
storm.
a storm.
Yeah, and just to go through and record what the lighthouse keepers felt and what it was
Yeah.
like there, because I mean it's all lost now. I mean the lighthouse keepers are dying off one by one, and
Yeah.
soon we'll just have whatever stories they have in books, and of course people like books, but it's not necessarily believe the stuff that's in it.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. So
Jim Pope was one of the last Coast Guard lightkeepers at Whaleback Lighthouse. And I should just mention Whaleback Lighthouse is a 70-foot granite tower at the entrance to Portsmouth Harbor, the mouth of the Piscataqua River. And our group actually takes care of it. And Jim was one of the last Coast Guard keepers there in the early 60s. He just passed away a few months ago.
I didn't know he died.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Um,
wasn't aware of that.
Mm.
Oh, that's a shame. He had some
Yeah.
great stories. He did a couple of events with it. He talked about living there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like a stand-up comedian when he would talk
he
about
was
it. But
awesome.
so I interviewed him on the podcast that is available to hear.
Oh, that's good. So I recommend it because Jim was a great guy. I wasn't aware that he passed. Wow.
Like to
see what I
talk
mean?
about how he lived on Spam sandwiches mostly. when he
And,
lived on-
wait a minute, and lobsters.
Oh, well,
short lobsters, he would say, which are illegal lobsters, but it's a long
He's
time ago, so I guess it doesn't matter to say that.
gone
but,
now. They ain't gonna prosecute him.
right.
But yeah, he was a character. And the other thing a lot of people aren't aware of is that every lighthouse is different. For instance, Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse is basically a big tube. We have stairs go all the way up to the ring, but Whaleback has floors, and
Yeah.
because they lived there. That was
They
their-
lived inside it. Yeah.
Yeah,
If you got a
yeah.
lighthouse on a rock like Whaleback, where there's
Yeah.
no room for a separate keeper's house, the keepers had to live inside the tower, which was a very different way of life from
Oh,
a
yeah.
pretty place like Noble Light or Portsmouth, where there's a separate keeper's house.
I got a little taste of that when we did a fundraising event with Gary, who did the swim thing. And I was
You
dressed
got
up
a taste of that, probably literally, the waves probably hitting your face. But you were Santa Claus for that event.
Yeah,
so.
I was on whaleback, and he swam from what, Kittery?
Yeah, from a point on the on Sagamore Creek. And bottom line is he swam, I think it was at least 3 miles in winter,
Wow.
December.
in the Christmas season.
Wow.
He did another one for us that was more like 5 miles some years earlier, but and it started late because the support boat was late getting there because it's a long story, but it started much later than it was supposed to. So Gary ended up swimming in the dark, as you remember, and he's trying to come ashore at the rocks at Whaleback Lighthouse, and you were there in the Santa suit, and he couldn't see a thing. So it was, and you couldn't see him, I believe, right? So it was really
brutal.
difficult for everybody.
Good Lord.
And our friends Bob Trapani and Jim Leslie were out in a little rubber boat, and a fishing boat coming into the harbor almost ran them down. The whole thing. Luckily, nobody died, and there were no serious
There were no
injuries.
deaths in making this.
But
no humans were hurt in the filming of this event.
right. But it was a little nerve wracking. It turned out okay.
Jim Leslie gave me a generator loan, and we put red and green lights on the Whaleback Lighthouse, so we lit it up for Christmas.
Yep.
I froze my.
It took us
Yeah, I did. It's like it took me 2 days to warm up. Honest to God, it was so freaking cold. I had one room that I had a small heater in, and I tried to close it off, but oh God, was it cold! And all I had was a stupid Santa Claus, and that was a cheap Santa Claus suit, not like a real Jeff Blanchard.
What must it have been like living in that cylinder in a nor'easter in the middle of the winter with the waves breaking?
That's what I want to find out.
I've gotten pictures of the waves breaking over the top of that lighthouse.
Over the top.
Oh, yeah, imagine that.
God.
How tall is it, Jeremy?
It's about 70 feet.
Picture that.
Jim Pope, who lived in there again, he used to say he was there for one of those storms, he said, where the waves were going over the top. And he said, you just grabbed your bar of soap and went up to the out on the balcony at the top of the lighthouse, and that was your shower, because otherwise there was no shower in there.
He was a hot ticket. He really was.
He was.
So those like Whaleback, or when the sea is actually hitting some of these lighthouses, the structure must be amazing. I mean, imagine the force that it has to withstand.
It's a massive. Well, to give you an idea, Whaleback used to have a break wall on it, and it was this big, huge. I don't know. Where was my picture here? I don't know. Where's my other hand? Okay, they're big, but the huge 4x8x8s, 10x10s, 12x12 pressure treated things. This whole wall of them.
That I think it was huge. Yeah,
they were
heavy wood.
Yeah,
washed away in a storm.
Yeah. One day it was there, and next day it wasn't.
Wow.
Yeah, just totally gone.
Yeah, well, Whaleback, like a number of these granite lighthouses, they're often referred to in England. They call them sea wash lighthouses. Sometimes they're called wave swept lighthouses. These granite towers have made of massive granite blocks that are dovetailed together, kind of hooked into each other, like dovetailing in carpentry.
Yeah.
So they're built to withstand those waves, and in fact, they actually kind of tighten up, against the force of waves. So you've got one in Scotland that's over 200 years old, 1811, Bell Rock Lighthouse, an example of a dovetailed granite tower.
This one,
the oldest one in the world.
Isn't there? Wait a minute, isn't there oldest one in the world?
That's the oldest one in the world. Yeah,
there
were ones before that, but that's the oldest surviving tower of its type in the world.
Oh, tower. Okay, because I thought there was in England there was a Roman lighthouse.
Eddystone. Yeah, Eddystone, which is similar. The first Eddystone light was like 1698, but the first one was destroyed in a storm in 1701, if I remember right. And the guy who designed it was in the lighthouse when it went over, and he died, which is kind of ironic, with a few other people.
Steve and I interviewed a woman from Wales who owns a lighthouse out there, and it was actually used in the film Doctor Who. Oh, yeah, so that was kind of cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are European lighthouses, worldwide lighthouses, similar to American lighthouses, or is it different?
You should say the other way around, because we copied the designs from the continent.
Well, we're
Some
just
of
teenagers.
like I was in Scotland a few years ago with the U.S. Lighthouse Society, and I was so impressed by some of those lighthouses. They're so beautiful. The ones being built in Scotland in the early 1800s were beautiful buildings, ornate, and they weren't just built to be utilitarian. They were built to be beautiful. Our lighthouses at that time were just simple stone towers, so-called rubble stone towers. They used whatever stone they found on the site, and they were just super simple. So it took us a while to kind of catch up with more sophisticated lighthouse building. Yeah. But Scotland, the Stevenson family of engineers designed almost all the lighthouses in Scotland. That was the family of Robert Louis Stevenson, the writer.
Oh, wow.
They're the most famous lighthouse engineers in the world. There were absolutely gorgeous lighthouses being built in England and Scotland and France well before we started doing anything interesting lighthouse wise.
Well, we weren't even around.
They're like little palaces, really, a lot of them. France, Spain, Portugal, they're gorgeous lighthouses.
As we talk about the age, talk a little bit about New England lighthouses pre-electricity. How did they keep the light going? Yeah.
Depends on how far back you go. Like Boston Light, when it was established in 1716, used candles at first. Used spermaceti candles.
Excuse me?
And then whale oil from the sperm whale.
Okay.
Glad you clarified that.
Glad you clarified that.
So there was just a big ass candle at the top?
Yeah. They used whale oil for a long time. And then by the mid 1800s, whale oil was getting super expensive. And they switched to lard oil, which the keepers called pig oil. And of course it stank. And it would freeze in the winter. So the keepers typically would, in the colder places, would heat it on the stove first and then bring it up and put it in the lamp in the lighthouse. So yeah, it stunk up the house too.
Lovely.
And then Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse was, when the current tower was built in 1878. It was the first lighthouse in the country to use kerosene. Kerosene became the standard fuel by the late 1800s.
We still have the oil house too. We totally.
Yeah, it's a lot of deliveries and a lot of storage, isn't it?
We had an oil house that we kept it in, but it's completely restored, so you can actually go to Portsmouth Harbor and see what it looked like. But you go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah. Well, a light like Portsmouth Harbor, it's a fairly small light. They had these Fresnel lenses, these beautiful glass lenses, and they came in different sizes, first order being the largest. Portsmouth Harbor is a fourth order, so it's relatively small. Only took a couple of quarts of oil a night, so it didn't burn through the kerosene super fast.
Yep.
So the lighthouse tenders, especially for the offshore lights, the oil was delivered by boat, and a couple of times a year they would replenish the oil supply.
So why are there so many ghost stories about lighthouses? You hear about lighthouses and you always hear ghost stories about murder and people who died at sea and that. What do you think, Jeremy?
I think you have theories about that too. I know there's theories about water somehow being involved or helping. I don't know if helping is the word, but involved with paranormal events, that kind of thing. But there's something about the mystery of lighthouses that kind of lends itself to these stories, I think. I mean, you see a lighthouse out by itself in the ocean, you see that flash at night. I think it lends itself to imagination. I'm not saying that these stories are made up, but in some cases, imagination and exaggeration possibly plays a role in some of the stories that have been passed down.
But but you look at Portsmouth Harbor now. We've been really lucky. I've been there for 15 years now, and the Coast Guard's longer. And we get stories. And the interesting thing about the stories is a lot of them will mesh. In other words, they kind of collaborate themselves in different things, not only from us, but also from the Coast Guard to people that have been there. It's intriguing. And I've been so lucky to have been involved in this because I've been able to study and understand, that, this is if you're going to believe in proof in the paranormal, this has got to be whatever's going on there is being, verified by various people.
You and I have had experiences there too. Yeah. But I heard a distinct voice in the lighthouse say, "Hello." I know what I heard, and I know there was no explanation for it.
And we were there for the 250th anniversary of the lighthouse. Which was a terrible night, by the way. It was so hot and stinking. But anyway, we were in the lighthouse and we went up. Do you remember when we went up all the way up to the tower? And we heard that huge bang. You're not going to remember it, are you?
I don't remember it real well, to tell you. There's been so many things there.
But
I'll tell you that there was during one of our tours one day, our mutual friend Ed Stevenson was up in the lantern room talking to people during a public tour, and the trap door that goes up from the level below, called the watch room, there's a ladder going up into the lantern room. Trap door was closed. He was standing near it, probably had a foot on it. And the door went boom, made a sudden loud noise. And he thought that the volunteer below had knocked on it or something, or tried to open it. And he opened it up and said down to Sharon, who was there, what did you want? She said, "Oh, I thought that was you." And, everybody above it and below it, heard that. And it was, I guess, really loud. A woman came out a few minutes later and said to me, I was outside. She said to me, I think the captain, meaning Joshua Card, the longtime keeper there, she said, I think the captain played us a visit up there.
Yeah, on that 250, whether you remember it or not, Jeremy, we had all climbed up to the tower, and it was the last one coming up. And how many stairs are up there?
48.
Yeah.
44.
44, and I'm getting old. And so I made my way up to the top there. And as soon as we got there, we heard this bang. And Jeremy he says, "Oh, it sounded like the door slammed." And I says, "I don't think so." And I went all the way down the 44 stairs.
Oh yeah, now I remember.
And checked it, and it was still secured. And went all back up the 44 stairs, and told him, that the door is secured. But we have, honest to God, it was a huge bit. Do you remember it now?
I do.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of experiences kind of like that. We've had people like Michelle, who's currently our chairperson, has been there by herself and heard footsteps on the stairs. She was sure about it. Ghost Hunters, the TV show, had stuff like that happen when they were there.
You always tell the funniest story.
Not get deeply into that, but
no, you always tell the funniest story though about the one when they were in the fort.
Oh,
when they heard that sound.
Yeah, Grant and Jason from Ghost Hunters. That was like 2007. They were there, and they were
after us, by the way.
What was that?
After us, by the way.
After you, absolutely. They were in Fort Constitution, which is right next to the lighthouse, very historic fort. They were really late at night, I think after midnight, and as they're walking around, there was a noise like a very high pitched sound. And Grant said that sounded like a man screaming. And he said, I was the client in that show. I was the one who showed them around and everything. And Grant said, "Oh, that sounded like a man screaming. We got to tell Jeremy about that." They never told me. I didn't know about that until I saw it in the TV show when it was broadcast. And as I don't know if there still are, but there were like bulletin boards online where people could comment on Ghost Hunters. And right after that show was on, some of the people from this local area around Portsmouth said, "Oh, that was the siren for the lift bridge on Route 1, Memorial Bridge over the Piscataqua River.
Funny.
Just before it goes up, the siren goes off, and that's definitely what they heard."
Yeah, I mean, if you're not aware of this stuff, I mean, you jump to conclusions, especially, I'm looking for ghosts, so this must be haunted. I mean, Rose Island is another example. People have said that when they've gone in the tower, they've heard baby crying. So that night we went up there and I recorded some stuff. It's seagulls.
Yep.
That's what
that makes sense.
It sounds like it if you listen to it, but it was seagulls.
So you're in a certain mindset.
They can make some pretty weird noises.
Oh yeah. Like fisher cats. Ooh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or seals and sea lions on the West Coast. There's stories about sea lions. They can sound like human screams sometimes.
Yeah.
So like one family, the woman, they had a couple of little kids, and she thought one of the kids was really sick and screaming or something. So she ran to the room, and it was a sea lion making the noise.
Okay, so we are coming down to the end of the show right now. Right?
Got about 3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes. So I want to get in if Jeremy has anything he would like to bring up. Like, for instance, how can people get a hold of you, Jeremy?
I have a website, newenglandlighthouses.net, that's got history and information about all the lighthouses of New England. I do the podcast for the U.S. Lighthouse Society, which is based in Washington State. And people can hear the podcast Lighthearted, 2 words, light space hearted, by finding it on their smartphones, or go to news.uslhs.org. News.uslhs.org. The podcast is on there. And my email is on my website, and also on the podcast site. So,
All your books are available where?
Amazon, other online booksellers, some like Barnes and Nobles in New England carry some of them, etc. But they're easy to find on Amazon.
And you too can be a member of the American Lighthouse Association and Portsmouth Harbor, Friends of Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouses. If you want to help out, you can be a volunteer and get to go to these places and help out. You can also support us by donating or becoming a member. So if you go to our website, which is
PortsmouthHarborLighthouse.org, or the American Lighthouse Foundation, lighthousefoundation.org.
And you can, join us and work,
Absolutely.
work with Jeremy and me. Doesn't get any better.
If you joined, you get to see some lighthouses.
How you will.
Of course you do. Sure, yeah. I'll also mention the other big organization that I'm involved with, the U.S. Lighthouse Society, does tours all over the world, so people can sign up for domestic or international tours. I'm going to get to go to Ireland in July.
Cool.
Tour.
Well,
Yeah.
providing this COVID thing is going over and down with some places locking down again. So it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Do you have a golden key, Jeremy, to all the lighthouses in the United States?
Golden key.
No, I used to have the standard Coast Guard ACE navigation key, but they took that away. But these days, most lighthouses run by private organizations have their own locks anyway, so they're all different.
That's all right. Coast Guard cuts them off anyway.
Yeah, but you can make a phone call, right? And you're in.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And also, Jeremy mentioned earlier, the Friends of Flying Santa. If you want to help with that and help support our servicemen, the Coast Guard,
Yes.
where can they find out information about the Friends?
FlyingSanta.org. FlyingSanta.org, and there's history of the flights and everything on there. It's really interesting, and there's some cool merchandise, books and stuffed animals and things. Make great Christmas presents that help support.
Can you
the
get
groups.
a Jeremy Dontremont bobblehead doll?
That's an idea. We haven't done it yet, but I think it's an
Yeah.
excellent idea. Yeah.
Available
Is
on
there
New
a
England
Ron
Ghost
Bullock
Project.
bobblehead? You are your own bobblehead.
You
doll.
know what? I almost thought about that. Doing it. By the way, today's show is brought to you by Circles of Wisdom, 386 Merrimack Street, Methuen, Massachusetts, and the Gallant Messier Family Law Group, and good friends on Patreon, Ghost Chronicles Radio on Patreon. You too can become a member, and we've got some great new things that are coming up, thanks to my good friend Jason Doobie, who is a graphic designer of adult comic books.
Really?
Yeah, so look forward to that, and we have
Not adult comic books.
they're adult. The new one's Lilla and Tara, the vampire and the succubus sisters.
Okay.
Yep. All right.
Anything else you want to know?
No, fair enough. Just wanted to clarify that, I guess.
I put it on. Yeah, it's for adults. You can. He did a great job. He's the one that drew Ann and I the
Oh, yeah.
picture of us, and also the one that Van Helsing with his spray on. Yeah, he's a great graphic. He's going to be doing some stuff for us on Ghost Chronicle Radio on Patreon, only available to our Patreon suppliers. And we got to go.
Very nice.
Jeremy, thank you so much for joining. As always, great.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, guys. Nice being here.
So, Lou, thank you. And I guess we'll wrap it up.
Had
So,
fun.
till next time, good night and God. Hey, have a good Thanksgiving, everyone.
From ghoulies to ghosties, long-leggedy beasties, and things that go bump in the night. Deliver us, good Lord,